Hi everyone, it's Tammy with Shabby Fabrics. I am back with a Riley Blake Door Banner Club. This month we have Sweet Summer. This is the June wall hanging. If you're just joining us, I want you to go back to the April wall hanging where we talked in depth about finishing your wall hanging. We do binding, we did the hanging sleeve, we made sure we took you all the way through the project so that you knew how to complete it. Today, notions that I have on set with me are the Clover Extra Fine Patchwork pins. If you have not gone through your pins in your sewing room lately, this might be a good time to do that. I love these extra fine pins. They're very, very sharp. They're very fine shaft on the pin and they go right into your fabric. They don't disturb seams. They're my absolute go-to every time I sew patchwork. I also have the Clover Magnetic Pin Cushion with me. I have a blade saver. If you're doing chain piecing, you can easily clip those apart, clip your pieces apart with a blade saver. I have the Carrera black and white thread set. This is Aurifil thread. I love Aurifil thread. We use it every day in the sewing studio upstairs. I have a white spool on today, but there's also a black and a dark gray in here, so you would have 3 spools, all neutral colors for piecing quilts. I do have a Clover seam ripper. I'm going to try not to use that today, but I'm always going to keep it on the table next to me, just in case. A friction pen, a small pair of scissors, a rotary cutter with a fresh blade. We're going to be doing some squaring up and having a fresh blade on there and being able just to glide right around that ruler with the Creative Grid spinning mat. Very, very easy to do. So it makes your job easier. All right, so let's take a look at what we're going to do first. So I have my pattern from Riley Blake. I should also mention that these kits come in the most beautiful box. This month it's teal. I love that color. Beautiful sleeve on it. Just an absolutely gorgeous box. Riley Blake did a beautiful job on these. You are going to love having this box. It is part of your collection. All right, so let's take a look at the pattern. So the first thing we're going to do is I went through and I cut my pieces out and I used the stickers. Riley Blake, they had said in the beginning that you should probably label your fabric. That was very smart advice. So grab your stickers, get some magic sizing. I did size all my fabric prior to cutting it. I think that's really important. It just adds a little bit of body to your fabric and makes pressing your seams much easier, and it makes your seams flatter. So I highly recommend that. So I did sticker my pieces, and then when you go to your directions, it's very easy to follow, and you're like, oh yeah, that's that piece. That's that piece. Sometimes if you don't know the scale in the picture, you think you're grabbing for a small square and it's actually a large one. So labeling your pieces is very helpful. All right, so let's get started. What we're going to make first, I'm going to drag out all the pieces I need here. Let's look at the ice cream cones. How cute are these? I just love them. So much fun, so summer, right? What's a classic ice cream cone? This is just a fun block to make. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make the tops of the ice cream cones. And these two fit together, as you can see on the one behind me. These two go together. So something that I like to do is I like to nest my seams. And by nesting my seams, I'm going to turn this over so you can see. I made the yellow one and I pressed the seam up. When I make the pink and red one, I'm going to press my seams toward the red. So I have these pieces to start. So what I did to get started, I took my little H squares, put them on here, drew a line corner to corner, sewed on the line. All right. Now I'm going to cut that a 1/4 inch away, just like this. Basic sew and flip. We've done a lot of that with this piecework. All right, so now I want to press this to the red. So the way I do that is I turn this over so that the red is facing me. Okay, I'm going to set that seam in there And then I'm just going to turn the fabric just like this and lay it right over. Let's turn that over. You see how that just pressed that right to the red? Okay, let's do it again. So I have this here. I'm just going to flip this piece over, and it automatically presses that seam right to the red. So if I start with the color that I want to press to on top, it'll automatically do that when you turn this over. Just like that. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is I am going to make the ice cream cone. Let's set this stuff aside. Let's make the cone. So for that, I'm going to use my SS rectangle, and I'm going to use one of my B rectangles. This is my white. Oh, I have an extra one. That's okay. I might need that if I mess up, right? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some lines on these. All right. So I'm going to take a friction pen. I like a friction pen because the line goes away with heat. If you don't have a friction pen, you can grab a set of 2. I have black, and then we also have different colors on our website if you don't want black. Let's use this. This is just a straight edge. This is a seam guide, and I'm just going to draw a line from corner to corner like this on one. And now I'm going to draw the line the other direction on the other one. This is a very clever way, but it's a very different sew and flip method. The method is basically the same, it's just very different how she's doing this. All right, so I have 2 blocks that look like this. All right, so the first one I'm going to use is this one. And I'm going to take my rectangle, and I'm going to put this on here just like this. Now I know common sense says to sew that, right? Don't sew yet. What we're going to do is we're going to measure 2 1/8 inches from the right-hand side. Make sure you're measuring from the right-hand side. From the right, over here, 2 1/8. 2 1/8 is not very much. In fact, I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. 2 1/8 is right here. I'm going to make a mark with my friction pen, all right? 2 1/8, right there. And I measured that from the right, okay? Now, I'm going to take this rectangle and I'm going to rotate it like this. So this is at the top, and look where this one ended up. This one ended up on that mark that I marked for 2 1/8. Okay, so let's actually pin that together before we go forward and sew that. I'm definitely putting pins in this thing. I'm going to pin this quite a bit because I'm going to sew on that line. So when I put pins in here, I'm going to keep my pins out of the path of my presser foot because I don't want my machine to get caught on a pin, and I also don't want to stop and have to take a pin out. So I'm going to pin this on here securely, just like this. There we go. Okay, so I've got 5 pins in this. It's not going anywhere. Okay, so I have this top is now matching with this mark. I'll show you that mark at the bottom right here. That's where this point is. Okay, so let's go sew that starting here and go all the way to the bottom. Let's take the pins out and let's see what that actually looks like, all right? So now this piece here is going to flip. Look at that. You see how it fills that space? Just like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and trim that at 1/4 inch. So you saw me check that to make sure it worked. Okay, I'm going to press this, heat that seam up a little bit, and I'm just going to press it right over with my fingers and follow it with the iron. There we go. Okay. So on the back, when you look at this, you see this white is sticking out right here. Let me put this over here. There we go. Now you can see it. See how this white edge is sticking out past this? I'm going to clip that off of there. I'm going to take that off because it's just excess fabric. It's like a dog ear. It's just excess fabric and I don't need it. So that's half of it done. Now the other half. So now I'm going to measure 2 1/8 inches from my left-hand side. So I'm going to put my ruler at 2 1/8, and now I'm going to put a mark on here. You see my mark is on the white this time. Before it was all on the brown. Now it's actually on the white. So again, this sits on here like this, and then it rotates around. There it goes. This point lines up, and this point lines up with my mark. This one and this one. Get over there. Pick that up and make sure. There it is. Okay, so it's right in the corner, right where I want it. Okay, so now again, let's pin that in place. Yep, and you just feel free to use as many pins as you think you need to use to get this stabilized on here. It's a really weird seam to sew, not one we normally do as quilters. We usually just sew straight seams that are not at weird angles, right? Okay, I think I've got that on there. So I'm going to go start up here and come down to here. All right, so let's get our pins out and flip that over and see what that looks like. So this should fill this space right here. Look at that, it does. I like that. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Let's cut this off. Just like that. Give it a trim. Now let's give it a good press. And I'm just pressing these right over, just like that. All right. I just have a little tiny bit on this side. We're just going to take that off. Okay, so my next direction is now I'm going to trim this up, this entire thing, to 4.5 by 6.5. Let's use the bigger ruler. And let's find 6.5. So 6.5 is here. So I'm going to turn this so that the 6.5 is up. What I'm looking for on this, I'm going to turn this sideways. I need to trim this 1/4 inch past, you can't see that. I already know the camera cannot see that. There we go. Let's use this end. So now you can see that dotted line is your 1/4 inch. You're going to trim this 1/4 inch past your point. All right, I'm going to make sure this white line goes through the middle of my point. That's the center of my ruler. And this is 1/4 inch. Here we go. Just like that. Okay, now let's turn it around. Now I can use the other side of the ruler. Now when I trim this to 6.5, you can see the 6.5 line runs here, and I just have a little tiny bit to trim off of this other side. Just like that. Okay? That is my ice cream cone right there. Okay, so let's set that aside. Let's go back to our ice cream top. Here we go. So here's how this is going to go together. 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's do that. Let's put the little band on. Okay, I'm going to put a pin, a couple little pins just to hang on to this. All right, I'm going to go sew this 1/4 of an inch side to side. All right, so now remember on this that we were pressing to the red, right? Both of these are to the red. I'm going to press this one to the red as well. The reason I'm going to do that is because when you make the yellow one and you're pressing your seams the other way, now these two seams are going to nest together right here. So you can see that right here. This goes to the red, this goes to the yellow, and these seams nested. It worked very well when putting this together to make sure I hit that point. All right, now I'm going to put this onto here, onto my ice cream cone. And we will have our ice cream cone done and be ready to move to the next block. I'll go get this sewn. Okay, so let's look, how am I going to press this seam? Well, again, I'm going to press it up because on the yellow one, I pressed it down, and that makes these two seams nest right here. So let's do that. So I have the pink up because I'm pressing towards the pink. I'm going to flip this over. Just like that. All right. There we go. There's my ice cream cone. He's ready to go in with his friend. All right, so let's set these aside. So the next part of this is our popsicle. All right. I've done part of this ahead. Again, pieces labeled, boy, that just, it really does make a difference. So let's make a popsicle base. I'm going to need a CC, an O, and 2 FF, just like this. This is a popsicle base. All right, take these little stickers off. All right, so as you would expect, this is to here, this is to here. Press towards the darker yellow, and then I added the bottom one on like that and pressed towards the darker yellow as well. Okay? So let's keep that there. All right, there's our popsicle. Let's do the top of the popsicle. This is the stick. All right, so I have HH and BB. Here we go. So on this one, we're going to do sew and flip on the corners. So the first time I did sew and flip, I was just drawing the line with a friction pen. I want to show you how to do that with a corner clipper. This is a folded corner clipper by Creative Grids. If you don't like to draw the line, this is the tool for you, all right? So I know that these lines are going to go on here like this, right? They're going to go at an angle. So I'm going to take my folded corner clipper and I'm going to put it on here, 1.5 inch square. You can see the bottom lines up, this side lines up, right on. Now, instead of drawing the line, I'm just going to cut. I'm going to trim that away. Now I'm going to go sew this from corner to corner. So I'm going to put a pin in this just to hang on to it. Because I know these two corners are going to try to wander away from each other. I don't want to let them get away from each other. They need to stay together. So I'm going to put a pin in there to make sure that those corners don't wander away. All right, so I'm going to sew from here to here. Okay, so let's give this a little press, like this. I'm not going to worry about nesting seams on this because the popsicles are not right next to each other. They've got a little bit of a sashing strip in between of them. So I can just go ahead and press this like normal. All right, so now let's take this line off of here. Okay, so now I'm going to put this one on. I'm going to show you yet another way to do this. I don't want to draw the line, and I really don't like cutting it beforehand. I get that. Here we go. Diagonal seam tape by Cluck Cluck Sew. This is fantastic. If you're tired of drawing lines, you don't have to draw lines anymore. I'm going to put a pin on this out here because I know that I'm going to start in this corner and I'm going to sew to this one. Now I've seen quilters who actually just go for it. They say, yeah, you can start here, and if you look at this corner, you'll sew straight to it. Yeah, sometimes my lines are just kind of, they're a little wobbly, and I get them back on course, and then it just doesn't work for me. I can't do it. I end up ripping it out and drawing the line. So here's what I'm going to show you. It's actually tape that's on the machine. Let's look at this. So this is the Cluck Cluck Sew diagonal seam tape right here. This is lined up, so this is the 1/4 inch mark. This black line is the 1/4 inch. The red is where my needle is. This is the very center of this. This is a 1/4 inch on the other side. Okay, so when I put this piece in here like this, and I line this up, and I'm starting right here where my needle comes down, you see I can put this corner right here. Now, as I sew, I'm just going to run this right along. I'll start sewing here. And you can see how I can just run this point right along that red line. Look how cool that is. You see that? And I don't even have to draw the line, just like that. Now you can run this tape further up if you like. I have it stopping here because we've been taking this table on and off, and I didn't want the tape to get messed up. The other thing I should tell you, before you put this tape on, take something like a lens wipe or something that's got a little bit of alcohol in it and wipe over this and clean it really well, because the oil from your machine gets on the table and the tape will not stick to it very well. I'm going to go ahead and trim a 1/4 inch from this now, like this, and press. So whatever method works for you, you have 3 choices on how to do a sew and flip corner like that. All right, this is the top of the popsicle. So we have a popsicle. I have the top. Now let's do the stick. All right, now I chose the double stick to show you today. So I have 2 E's, I have 2 RR's, and an F, just like this. All of these go together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and it looks like this. Okay? Now when I look on the back, I'm wondering, how do you press this? Well, you can press this however you'd like. I would prefer to press this open. That's how they said to press it. That's the way I believe it should be pressed. So I'm going to take my iron, and I love this Panasonic because of this tip. It runs right along that seam, and it just presses that seam right open. See how quick that was? I love that. I'm not burning my fingers, but I'm letting this tip of that iron spread that seam apart. I am pulling a little bit on it this way, just to give a little bit of tension, because I don't want to take a tuck on the front of this. Just like that. There we go. Now let's press it from the front. Beautiful. All right. Quick and easy. Okay. So that goes on like that. All right, so let's assemble the popsicle together. So I'm going to put my top on like this. I'm going to pin. I'm going to put my points on top. This seam allowance is already going this direction, so he's fine. This one, however, is going back this way. So I'm going to put a pin in that seam allowance just to remind it to stay there and not wander away from me. Here's my sticks. They're going to go on like this. Now I have a lot going on here. This is just a solid piece, so I'm definitely going to leave the sticks up. There we go. These fit right together. Fingers are grabbing multiple pins, not just one. I'm going to put at least one more pin in this just to hold all these seams. Let's actually do one more. I want to hold all these seams together like this. Okay, so I'm going to sew across here and across here. All right, so let's take a look at how we should be pressing this block. So right away I can see this seam definitely wants to go this way. So I'm going to go ahead and let this seam just lay right down right here because it does not want to, I'm not going to try to press that seam open because we've got so much going on already. This seam, I'm going to go ahead and push that one onto the popsicle. Okay, just like that. There we go. All right. Ah, we have a popsicle. How cool is that? I should keep my stuff over here so you can see it. All right, we have ice cream. Now we have a popsicle. Beautiful. All right, let's make a star block and we'll be done with the blocks. All right, so I'm going to show you how to make one of the stars. Here we go. So I have my C blocks, which are in the corners. I have L, double A, and LL. This is the center of our star. I love that fabric. Okay, we're going to set those aside. So let's do some half square triangles. All right, so the way we're going to do a half square triangle is we're going to stack two on top of each other. And we're going to draw a line from corner to corner. So a 1/4 inch on either side. You know, a 1/4 inch on either side is always kind of an unknown, right? Is my foot exactly a 1/4 of an inch? Where is my eye supposed to be? How do I do that? I'm going to show you a Creative Grid seam guide. I love this little tool. Let me show you how this works. So I'm going to place this on here. And I'm going to move it up and down until I can see my corners in the opening. There's my first one right here. And here's my first one right here. I can't put it on here like this. I see this one, but not this. So I'm trying to find the, there we go. This is the sweet spot right here. Okay. So I have my corner in here and my corner in this V. Now, this is exactly a 1/2 inch wide. So I'm going to draw the line on either side of this. And I'm going to use a spinning mat to turn this. I'm going to hang on to this little guy as we go. And draw the line. Perfect. Much better. Now, I just have to sew on the line. Sewing on a line is much easier than trying to guess where the line is. All right, so I'm going to go do that. When I come back, we'll cut it apart and have half square triangles. All right, so next thing, I need to cut this in half. I'm going to cut it in the center. All right. And let's see how to press this. Now the dark yellow, I'm pressing towards the white. And on the light yellow, I'm pressing it towards the yellow. And I want you to see that. And I'm doing that so these 2 points right here nest. You see how this goes together? I want these points right here to nest. Very important. That way this is a nice sharp point. So this is the lighter yellow. So I'm going to press this towards the lighter yellow. Okay. We have our yellow up. Just like that. Okay. Yep, and the dark yellow, I press those towards the white. Okay. So let's get these trimmed out. and then we'll put them together. All right? So this needs to trim out to 2.5 inches square. So I'm going to use a 2.5 by 2.5 Creative Grids ruler. I like this little ruler. First of all, it has got a lot of the grip on the back of it, all the way around the perimeter and right here in the center. It does have a lot of grip to it. So when I apply pressure to it, it really isn't going anywhere. You can see the table's probably shaking. Okay, so I have my line is in the middle. When you square up, you want to trim from all 4 sides, not just 2. So I'm sliding this up to make sure I can take a little bit off of all 4 corners. Here we go. This spinning mat is invaluable for doing things like this. See how quick I can square that up? I made 4 safe cuts, and I have a perfect 2.5 inch square. Let's do it again. I need 2 of these. Just like that. Perfect. All right. So next, I'm going to put these together. Let's lay out our square. That might be the best thing to do, is lay the star out so you can see how this goes together. We're going like this and like this. So that's where your 4 squares came in. All right. And then I'm going to take a light, is going to go here. Hang on. There we go. Sometimes you have to turn them around and around until they make sense, right? And here. And here. And like that. Okay, that's how the block goes together. So let me separate these. Let's go ahead and put these together. I'll do that with you. So now, when I look at this, now my seams are just going to lock right together. Perfect. I love that. I love a good nested seam. I'm going to use my favorite pin. I'm going to go right into that seam and right out, just like that. Now I'm locking that seam together. It's held there. So when I come down and sew this at 1/4 inch, perfect. We will have a perfect point. I'm going to do them both at the same time and save myself some steps here back and forth. All right, so this one I'm going to sew from the bottom up. This one I'm going to sew from the top down. So let's get our pins out and let's take this to the pressing mat. So I'm going to heat that seam up first of all. I'm going to open this. Little slight tension on this one, and just let that iron, tip of that iron, just run right down that seam. Now I'm not using steam when I'm doing this either. That I definitely wanted to make sure I told you that. Okay, and I want to show you something else. What I just started to do is I started to pressing at this end, but there's a lot of seams here going on. It's easier to start from the other side because you only have 2 seams to separate, not the yellow as well. And then press that open, just like that. I'm not using steam, just simply using a dry iron and a wool pressing mat. And those seams are laying very flat. There we go. That's how this goes together, just like this. So I'm going to put this onto here and this onto here. So now, with these seams pressed open, look how perfect this little triangle is right here in my dark yellow. So now I know exactly, pin this together first. So now I know exactly where my 1/4 inch is. I'm going to show you that. Right here is where I want to cross this point. I want to be right at, well, my friction pen won't make a mark. I'm trying. There we go. I want to sew right here at the bottom of these points. That is where my 1/4 inch is. If I put my thumbnail there and flip this, you can see you will have a perfect point when that comes out. All right, so let's do that. If you have sewn a 1/4 inch, when you put this together, this will be exactly a 1/4 inch up from the bottom. And you won't have to worry about your point. You're just automatically going to hit it because your seam was sewn correctly. All right, let's put this one on. So I'm pinning one end first. Then I'm going to make sure this stays open. So I pin one side and then the other, kind of at a diagonal. And then this is going to be where I start. All right, so let's go stitch these on. All right, let's get our pins out. All right, now I think I'm going to, oh, look how nice that looks. You see how sharp both points are. So when I look at this, I'm pressing this, you are correct, right to the center block. That's how this wants to go. We're going to let the fabric tell us what it wants to do. That is perfect. All right, there we go, just like that. So now these, I press these towards the white. That push that seam this direction. So now, when I go to put this together, these seams nest right here on the end. I'm going to show you that. See how this seam is this way? This one's this way? They lock right together. I'm going to put my pin right here. The reason I pin on the right-hand side of this seam is because as I'm sewing along, I don't want this fabric to push and mess up the seam. So if I put my pin here, it holds that fabric right where I want it. I'm going to ignore the center first, and I'm just going to come over and I'm going to get this other seam locked into place where I want it. Now I'm going to look at the center. You can see how it's even and these two are together. If one of these was too small, one of these was smaller than the other, I would just give slight tension here like this and grab it. Sometimes your center is smaller than this square here because this square is a solid piece. This one's got a lot of seams in it, right? There we go. All right, let's pin the other side. All right, so we're going to start with our nested seam here. I'm going to wiggle this in my fingers so I can feel those seams lock. Pin, other seam, pin again. Look at my center. This looks really good. I pin a diagonal one across to hold that seam open. You know what? I'm also going to put a pin right here at the very end on both of these sides because I know that corner is this corner right here. They're going to walk away from each other. I already know it. Okay, that's how I've got it pinned. I'm going to start here, go all the way to the end. Okay, let's see how we did. There we go. Look at that. All my points are just right where I want them. My intersections stayed right where I wanted them. Perfect. All right, so now let's look, how do I press this? This is kind of a mess going on, right? This wants to go this way, these want to go this way. Now I'm really going to press this open. I'm not going to fight either seam. I'm just going to simply separate them. Start at the bottom and just work my way slowly up. There we go. And the tip of that iron is just going to separate those seams for me. Just like that. Whoop. I flipped that one the wrong way. Let's repress that a little bit. Okay, let's do this side. There we go. Give it a good press from the top, just like that. Maybe a little bit of steam just to coax those things, coax that seam allowance open a little bit, like that. Beautiful. All right, and there's our star block. Beautiful. All right, so we have star blocks, popsicles, and ice cream cones. The last thing I have to show you is I have a checkerboard border that we had done with K&OO. I have my squares. I've sewed my checkerboard border. So I want to show you how to press this because in the directions it says to press it open. If you don't want, I don't see a need to press this open. If you'd like to, you can. If you want to distribute that bulk, it takes some time to do that. I'm going to show you how to do this my way. So I've set this down, wrong side up. And set my iron here. I'm going to apply slight tension, pulling ever so slightly to my left. And I'm just going to slide this iron right across these seams, just like this. By putting slight tension on this and pulling ever so slightly, I'm not pulling hard enough to pull it out of shape, just slight tension. That way, I don't take a tuck on the front, and let's double check that. So I'm just going to double check the front and make sure that I have not inadvertently taken a tuck and all these seams are perfect. Just like that. Look how fast that was to press. You're going to make 2 of these, one for the top, one for the bottom, and assemble per the instructions. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you picked up some good tips on how to put together an ice cream cone block, star blocks, nesting points, and some pressing tips. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again on a Shabby Fabrics tutorial.